Hello and welcome everybody. We're very excited to have you today with us for our session on how to have an impact as a marketer and influence your execs. I want to start today by acknowledging that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Gadigal people, and I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we all are working today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and the ongoing cultures and connections to the land and waters of New South Wales. As I said before, we're very glad that you're spending some time with us today. Ali and Terry, thank you so much for spending some of your time today sharing your insights with the audience. This is the first of many marketing sessions that we're going to have that we're putting together with Striving, and we can share at the end of the session some of the details so you can join us for more sessions. A little bit of housekeeping before we kick things off. The event is being recorded and it will be accessible via Striving's social platforms at the end of the session, so you can always go back, rewatch, or share it within your network. Please feel free to ask any questions as the session goes on, and we'll make sure that we go through all the questions and we'll select some for a discussion at the end. At the end, please share any feedback, comments, what you like, what you dislike, and we'll make sure that we take that in for our next sessions. So before I start and set the context for today, I want to give obviously the opportunity for Terry and Alison to share who you are, a little bit of your background. So maybe Ali, would you like to get started?
Sure thing. Thanks, Gerardo. Hi, everyone. So my name's Ali Tilling, or Alison, but that's like what my mum calls me when she's annoyed, so let's go with Ali. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at VML, which is now the world's biggest communications agency, so that's exciting. And yeah, I've been in that role about 6 years. I absolutely love my job. I absolutely love thinking about strategy and strategy for brands and for marketing. I'm originally, as you can probably hear, from the UK, but now a true Aussie. I've got my passport and everything, and I've got 2 very Australian children and a very Australian dog. So yeah, my role looks after Australia and New Zealand, and we've got quite big operations across those markets, so I'm kept pretty busy. But yeah, I love thinking about brands, how brands work, strategies behind them, strategy behind marketing, and yeah, love to chat all of that. I'll go over to Terry.
Thanks, Ali. So yeah, I'm Terry Martin, and I currently wear a number of different hats. So the first one is that I'm head of NIDA's corporate training division. So for the last 30 years, we provide communication, presentation, and leadership training to like hundreds of public and private companies and government departments. I'm also CEO and founder of the Business Bunch, which is essentially a consultancy that outsources marketing managers and general managers. And I'm vice chair on the board of ADHD Australia. So there's quite a lot to juggle. I'm also a mum, a wife, a cat mother, which is obviously very important. And look, you know, I've come from agency, then I swapped over to kind of client side, and I've worked on both sides. So I've both reported marketing to the exec level, and I've also had marketing reported to me. So I'm really, really excited to share those kind of insights, and obviously hear from Ali as well about her insights as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Terry, and thanks, Ali. Oh my God, we're just so lucky that we have 45 minutes with you both today to like unpack all of your experience with our audience. So thanks again for that. So just setting the tone for the conversation today, we put this together this session because obviously there's a lot of conversation around how marketers can build that expertise around having better conversations with the C-suite and sell the value of marketing, making sure that marketing is seen as an investment and not a cost just for the business. And I'm sure the conversation, the questions that we have today that we're gonna walk through today are gonna help us unpack that so that we all walk away from this session having a better idea of how to start those conversations and continue those conversations. So the first question that I have is, let's just start with the basics, and maybe let's start unpacking why it is so crucial in today's world to have marketing have a seat on that executive table. Maybe Terry, do you want to get us started there?
Yeah, sure. There's all the obvious reasons, the importance of brand, obviously the importance that marketing plays in helping to drive sales, and sometimes marketing does directly drive sales. But I think it's really important to have someone who's the custodian of the customer voice. And I think if you can really own that space, it definitely gives you a seat at the table. So every organisation exists and can only exist with customers. And if everyone else is just working on the thing they're working on and thinking kind of inside out, but no one's actually going, yeah, but what do they actually need? What are they saying? What are the trends? What's happening out there? If no one's actually doing that, you lose a little bit of touch. And I think that gives a really great purpose to a CMO, is if you can be that voice where you can bring those insights. Now, obviously sales teams can do that too, but I think marketing's broader. It's about looking beyond the four walls or the people we're already talking to. I think that it's imperative to have marketing at that level. I think it's imperative to have someone with that voice there. And I think if you frame it like that, it gives it such a reason to be, seated at that table. So that's what I think. Ali?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And I find, obviously, kind of working in strategy as well, I guess I kind of would say that, but yeah, couldn't agree more. I think there are also ways of, if you really think about how you're going to own that voice of the consumer, there are some things you can bring to the table that really kind of change the way conversations are happening and change the type of marketing work you can do to kind of make it better and make your C-suite kind of open to perhaps supporting more experimental work, or maybe you want to move them from being entirely based in performance marketing to doing more of that kind of brand building work, and that can be an ongoing conversation. But sometimes if you've done your qual research, for example, and you can bring some direct quotes into the conversation, that can be quite helpful along with all your kind of quant data. The other thing that can be great is, a lot of times people feel at that kind of C-suite or board level that they maybe don't have time to kind of talk to consumers themselves, or they don't feel in a place to do that. And sometimes, and you kind of need to be a bit sparing with this, but sometimes actually bringing some consumers into that conversation and almost running like a mini research panel in the right place, right time can be really effective as well. The other thing I guess I'd add is, like, everyone, I think probably everyone in this virtual room knows that, marketing is about growth. It's not a colouring in department, which I think is possibly the reputation it used to have a while ago. Mm-hmm. Marketing deals essentially with building your brand, and brand is one of the strongest paths to profit that we have. You can look at the composition of different stock exchanges, right? So if you look at New York Stock Exchange, Australian Stock Exchange, etc., and if you compare the 1980s to today, you'll see that the weight of value there has gone from kind of manufacturing to IP and brand. So we know, we are dealing with the thing that is powering growth and is powering growth for the economy. So I think it's just always worth kind of reminding ourselves of that and finding the most kind of up-to-date numbers on that, and really thinking about balancing that performance marketing, brand marketing, and making sure that kind of both of those bases are covered.
And Ali, if I can just say something, I think you'd be surprised though that there are still some companies where they do still see the marketing as the colouring in department. I think obviously we've got very, very sophisticated companies that where marketing is a driver, but there are so many that still don't fully understand the value of marketing because perhaps they've been more of a BD sales driven organisation. So marketing has always been played as a bit of an add-on, or you can just create business cards or whatever, And now they're starting to see competitors who are driven by marketing, and they're starting to go, oh, hang on, this is a thing we really need to focus on and put forward. Yeah. So it still exists. There's still a perception challenge, I think, we've got.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, I think there is a ways to go with that, and I think there's almost a watch out in it as well, because we're definitely not the colouring in department, and we definitely are the engine room of growth. But we also don't want to, like, there's something really special about marketing and the things that we do, which is that they are creative, and it's the creativity that makes it powerful. So whilst we don't want to be positioned as the colouring in department, we also don't want to pretend to be McKinsey or pretend to be finance or decide we're going to just be about the CFO. Like, we need to not. I think there's a confidence that comes with understanding the effect marketing can have, and I think really kind of training ourselves. And I think as an industry, we've done a bad job of this, like a really bad job of this.
But
we're starting to turn it around. Yeah, train ourselves to be able to talk about that. Sorry, Terry, you go.
No, but I think you're right. But it's how do we leverage that creativity for commercial gain? So it's the balance of the creativity, but ensuring that it always has a commercial, reason behind it. I mean, that's fundamentally what the C-suite will want. Sometimes those links aren't quite as clear, but it's actually ensuring that those two kind of work hand in hand.
Totally. And absolutely. I think that takes us really nicely to the next part of the conversation, and which is having marketing being able to understand the financial implications and the revenue metrics that move a business in order to be able to communicate why marketing activities can contribute to that and how marketing activities can contribute to that. How important it is for a business, so for a marketer to be able to capture all that information, and what would you say is the best way to then digest that and put it back in a way that is easy for executives or a board to understand and get the sense that marketing is there not only for the creativity and the arty bits of the story, but actually driving revenue? Terry, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to unpack here. So the first thing is understanding, what you're trying to do as a marketing department for an organization. Maybe they actually have a brand problem. So by doing that, you're not actually going to be bringing in sales immediately, because you've actually got a bigger job to do, and you're pulling different levers in order to be able to do that. But if your CEO or the C-suite don't understand that and they're asking for sales, you have a job to actually take them on the journey of understanding. And that means explaining things in ways that anyone in the room can understand, anyone who's maybe got pure finance background, right through to anyone who understands kind of creativity and marketing. And I think it's just really, really important. It's also important knowing, are you really walking into a job that's going to expect ROI? Is that actually what you're walking into? You might need to find that out before you start the job, because there are a lot of organizations now that are using marketing specifically to drive sales. You see a lot of them on social media. You see a lot of them playing very heavily in the digital space. But that might not be right for the organization that you're walking into. But you may have people kind of referencing them and saying that they're doing it. And it's like, yeah, but we've got a brand problem, and that's not necessarily going to deliver sales right on. I think it's a bigger question about understanding your internal audience just as much as your external audience. So I'm a big believer in understanding who you're talking to all the time. Internally, it's as equally as important as it is externally, because if you've got a CEO that perhaps has a pure financial background, the expectation is likely to be that they want to see ROI, and they're going to want to see data, and they're going to want to see figures. And if you come from a background which is much more based on creativity, there's probably going to be a disconnect. So it's how do you ensure that you're delivering on what the CEO or the C-suite needs, at the same time not losing the essence of what is right for the business as well. So there's a lot probably more to talk to about that, but I'll hand over to Ali. I'd love to hear her thoughts as well.
Yeah, I've probably got not a different, maybe an add-on to that perspective. And this is probably what comes from, I obviously work in an agency that's advising kind of clients and their C-suites on this. So maybe a slightly different perspective. I think the key thing is, over the kind of past 10 years, there's been a lot of advances in what we know about how marketing works. And, I'm sure there's probably varied levels of knowledge of that, but between everyone here, we've probably heard of some mixture of Byron Sharp and Mark Ritson and Peter Field and all the rest of it. And there are some women there too. So please check out Grace Kite from the UK. She's an econometrician if you haven't already. It's really important to get a bit of diversity in the marketing science kind of world. But what that work has essentially shown is that it isn't that creativity is over here and effectiveness is over here. The more creative your work is, the more effective it will be. Right? So that's what kind of sits at the heart of great marketing. Creativity buys you more return on your investment. And that's return commercially, but also, I guess, kind of some of those softer types of return that some kind of teams like to talk about more than other teams. Sorry. I think once you kind of understand that, and that's not necessarily the argument you need to go to a board or a C-suite with, right? But if we know that about marketing and we know that about the standard of work that we're all aiming for, then really what you want to do is create a culture in which that kind of work can thrive and in which those people that you need to get behind that work can get behind it. And for me, that really means you need to sell before you actually need to sell. You need to start creating that culture and that understanding, ideally, before you're at the point where you go, oh, like I've got this idea I really need to sell in, or we're at the point where we really need to kind of drive sales. We need to kind of sow the seeds for the most effective work to happen, because that's what will get you the commercial return that Terry's spot on, that people are looking for. And it's what will get it for you in the most effective and efficient way possible. So the model, there's a model I use to think about that in my agency among my team, and that is just thinking about maths, moments, and magic. Because the thing is, right, not everyone wants to talk maths all the time. There are marketers who are a lot more confident about the maths behind the effect of what they're doing. You know, and they can talk about cost of goods and services, and they can talk about kind of depreciation, and they can talk about how ROI kind of drives in that environment and all of those things. There's some who are less, they're just going to be less confident about that. And I think there's nothing wrong with knowing your strengths. So there's maths, there's moments, and that's knowing more about kind of the media environment in which the marketing is going to happen. What are those moments you're talking to people, to Terry's point? How is that going to have an effect? And then the magic, it's understanding the kind of the creativity and not just kind of saying, oh, well, it's a really good idea, so obviously it's going to work. Like that's not a strong argument. You need to think about how you are giving examples of creativity that's worked, maybe for other kind of brands in your category. Maybe show what the standard is. What's the standard we're aiming towards? Try and get that conversation a bit more tangible, because it's that kind of culture in which creativity will thrive, and therefore will be the power that you need to create the success that you want. That was a long answer, sorry, but it was a big question.
No, that's like, and absolutely, there is so much insight in both of your responses. I'm just summarizing so that we can move to the next one. Is I love my job as a marketer, because we are really like translators, and we have, like you said, Terry, we have to be so good on understanding not only external audiences but also internal, and be very aware of what we're saying to a specific individual or a specific team, so that things make sense and we can cannot take or take our programs where they need to be. So that's something that I feel like is our responsibility, but it's such a beautiful part of our trade. It's being able to be translator and good storytellers, not just externally but also internally. And there's obviously that comes with not only being able to sell our programs internally, but also getting our teams where they need to get to in order to deliver. Which takes me to the next question, which is, I think some of our audience today are in the process of maybe becoming people managers for the first time, and are starting to have these conversations with more senior people within the business and selling their programs within the business. There is a beautiful saying by Thomas Barta that is, there is a difference between doing marketing and leading marketing. What is your take on that? Maybe Ali, do you want to start with this one?
Sure thing. there is a difference. I'm a big believer that you don't have to have like leader in your title or chief of something to do some leading. And equally, you can have those titles and it still be quite important that you do some doing. Probably not all the time, because there is a difference, but definitely the two can mix and bleed and all those kinds of things. So you can lead and not have a leader title. You can do the doing as a leader. To do all of it well, I think and it's a point Terry made earlier really, really well. You have to understand what your ambition is. Like, what's your ambition for your business and your brand? And that kind of shows you, what are you holding up as great? What's the standard you're aiming towards? What are the objectives you're aiming towards? And that, I think, puts everybody in a position of leadership in a way, because we're all leading our business to that place, if that makes sense. That said, I think we need to doing the doing brilliantly is not second rate to leading. Like, there's no point everybody leading everything all the time, because otherwise nobody's doing anything, so there's not anything to lead. So I think the balance between the two is really important. And as somebody who is leading from the point of view of like managing people in a hierarchy, we need to really kind of show that the doing really matters and is really what kind of is actually going to be a big part of creating a result. I think it's also just thinking about it in terms of kind of partnerships, and the different kind of people outside of your immediate team that you're going to need to bring on board and feel involved and all of those kinds of things. One thing I would say, and this is maybe from an agency perspective, but it's just something that I've noted. I think the more that we can work together on how we are assessing work, like how we're assessing marketing ideas and what we're choosing to develop, and how we're kind of feeding back on it and making sure that it's the best it can possibly be, that is something to work on together as leaders, as doers, as client and agency, or in-house agency and marketing department, whoever it might be. Like, that sense of kind of have we all got a clear enough ambition that we know what are we aiming for, what's good enough, what does that look like?
Love that. Terry, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I love Ali's points. They're fantastic. I will add to that. For me, leading marketing is about knowing where marketing fits in the broader organisation. So what are our goals for the organisation, and ensuring that our strategy for marketing absolutely delivers on that. It's ensuring that we understand what the board's goal is. Perhaps you need to know not only what the CEO is trying to achieve, but how they're looking to get there. Understanding kind of where you play a part across all the different parts of the business. That for me is leading, because then that funnels down to ensuring we're doing the right things that we're doing. And obviously being able to direct a team of doers, let's just call that, for want of a better word, making sure that everything then ladders up. So that's the key, I think, for me. Sometimes I have experience that marketers are just doing marketing. They're doing the things that they like, because there's so many different, marketing's so broad, right? And there's so many areas that people can get very, very deep into. And often when they get deep into certain areas, they might say, this is the best. Like, they might go, digital marketing's the best because I know it really, really well. But in actual fact, maybe PR and events is probably better for this brand. But because they'll defer back to the thing they know, it's human nature. And I think if you've got a really clear goal, you know where you're supposed to go, that will be the litmus test of whether that's the right doing to be doing. So, yeah, leading for me is about actually knowing where marketing sits in an organisation, how it feeds in, understanding, where people are trying to go and how they're trying to get there. Then I think it's about, ensuring and coercing and kind of nurturing the team to make sure that they're doing is worthwhile, because we can have a lot of people doing a lot of activity and seeming to be busy, but a CEO will be saying, yeah, but is it delivering on my goals? And you've got to be able to stand up and say, well, absolutely it is, and this is why. So I'm kind of big on that, really ensuring we're laddering up to a greater goal. And I think leaders that's what they're responsible for.
Yeah, I love that. And if I can add to that, I love the idea of kind of making sure that the team of doers let's go with that, know and understand that their work is worthwhile. And I reckon, obviously, the commercial, like the ambition and the commercial return to the business is the main part of that. But I think there's also, and I think I spoke earlier about kind of some of the softer return on investment, some of the softer return on the work that you're doing. We really need to make sure as leaders that whole team kind of feels the worth of what they've done, because it's made them learn something new, or it's advanced their career, or it's taught them a new skill, or like there's that personal return, or they're just proud of it. Like, and I think, yes, that does not show up on a report to investors or to the stock market, but sure as hell shows up in the work that you will continue to do and the team culture that you foster.
Yeah, that's definitely a culture thing, 100%, right?
Yeah. Love that. Before we move to the next topic, I just want to remind everyone that you can ask questions. So just go into the fields, ask us questions, and we'll go through them at the end of the session. So we briefly talked about building that trust, right? Understanding what is the role that marketing plays in a specific business, and then slowly building that trust within the executive team or with the board. Do you have any tips or strategies on how to slowly start building that trust, so you get that confidence from your peers? Who wants to go first? I don't want to. Terry? Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to go back to knowing your audience, but I'm going to unpack what that means. So when you're talking about a C-suite, what is their background? So where have they come from? Have they come from organisations that had really strong marketing or not? So do you need to actually take them on a journey of understanding of marketing in a considered and kind way, not teaching them to suck eggs, of course? Understanding each individual's goals. Each department has different goals, understanding what those are. A really interesting one is, how do they take in information? So I have worked with a C-suite where they just want information, spreadsheets, data, just give that to me. I've had others that are like, I actually want visual images. I need creativity. And you've actually, I think it's up to our, a marketeer's responsibility to know what that is and make sure the right person is delivered the right information to make their jobs easier. I'm always a big believer that you should be making the jobs easier of those people above you. And Ali mentioned this, and I think it's really important. How do we give context or reference or benchmarks? Often I've been given results for marketing campaigns with no context, no reference, no benchmarks to know actually whether that's it. And they'll say, and this is really good. And you're like, is it though? But what tells us, what informs that? So it's really, really important to say, well, yeah, this based on industry, this is good, or based on last year's campaign, it's good, or based on something someone else has done, and here, here's how we kind of reference that. I think that's really, really important for people to be able to make, considered decisions. And I just say, make it as easy as possible for people who aren't marketeers to make decisions. So provide the information in the way that they like it, in the language that, is important to them, and make it easy for them to make decisions. And Ali made a really good point. How do you take everyone on a journey that means that when those decisions need to be made, they already understand the right decisions because you've explained to them about marketing and what you're trying to do. The why. And so when they come to the table, they're like, well, you've already taken me on that journey. You've made this really easy. So I think those are really important. I also think linking activity back to goals, always saying we're doing this because we're trying to get here. Because those things we're doing may not deliver straight away, but they are laddering. Again, I'll always talk about this, laddering up to the bigger goals of the organisation.
Thank you. That was great. Ali.
Love all that. And I've got essentially kind of the same points in slightly different words. One thing I guess a couple of things then I can try and, because I think what you've just described, Terry, is spot on. So what I'll try and do is give some really probably small, tactical, concrete examples of things that you can sort of start doing tomorrow if you're not already. Give yourself a break today, and it will help kind of make this happen. So one is really start, as I said, you need to start selling the ambition you're going for before you need that ambition to happen. So Terry mentioned, like, showing people what else is happening, showing kind of things that have been really successful for other companies in your category, really great, or not in your category, I mean, whatever, things that are appropriate is a really, really good way to go. Where you can find resources for that, things like the FE's database, if you've got access to that. So that is the effectiveness awards that happen annually. They are really good cases that have a real mathematical, like that they are proper kind of proofs of effectiveness and commercial effectiveness. They can be really good. You can kind of take those, you can use the executive summaries, you can use kind of the maths and kind of go, here's the light on the hill, like here's what someone else has done, and here's how the creativity or the work kind of gave this result. So that kind of detail can be really helpful. If you don't have access to that, feel free to get in touch with me or get in touch with your agency partner or in-house agency. Someone will be able to help you kind of find access to that. I think another thing I would say is, yes, I completely agree with Terry. You absolutely need to know your audience. You absolutely need to know their background. Like, I've made the mistake before of thinking somebody didn't know really too much about marketing because it wasn't their background, but actually it was an extra string to their bow, and it just, you don't want the conversation to get off on the wrong foot, right? So that's really important. The only thing I would add to that is be yourself. Like, the thing that can really do, like, bullshitting is obviously bad in any context, but it's particularly bad in a context like this. And you're in this team, you're in this position, you're part of marketing because of expertise that you have and because of a particular kind of point of view that you can bring to bear. So it is about taking on some of the language and some of the gravitas and understanding who you're talking to, but it's also like, bring the thing that makes you, because otherwise it's not going to work ultimately.
Yeah.
The final thing I'd just say is, I would just reinforce the absolute importance of, you need objectives for every single piece of work that you do. This is one of the best ways of proving to a C-suite or board or whoever, time and time again, that you are serious about the way that your work, however small, even if it's just one piece, it's a little part of a campaign, doesn't matter. All your work contributes to that overarching goal that Terry mentioned. And the way to do that is objectives, each one, max 3 to 5 maximum. You're not trying to, like, it's not about the kitchen sink. It's not about covering 25 things that might or might not happen. Get rid of the wishful thinking, 3 to 5 objectives, and how you are going to measure those objectives. That shows, above anything else, I believe, that shows a leadership team that you are understanding where the business wants to go, you're understanding how your work contributes to where the business or brand wants to go, and you know how you're going to keep an eye on whether or not that's working. It doesn't all have to be bigger than Ben-Hur. You just need to be mindful of it.
Love that. Understand your goals, understand your audience, remove assumptions, make sure you understand who you're talking to and their background, be authentic. I love that, Ali. I mean, I'm oversimplifying here, but it's it all comes back to that.
It's much better than what I said. It's not much better than what Terry said. Things tend to come out of her mouth in a great way, but yes, much better than what I said. Nice.
Love it. No, love that. And you brought up something pretty spot on for a last bit of the conversation before we move to the questions from the audience, which is attached to that part of being authentic. And I know that's going to be part of your answer, is what are the no-nos when it comes to having conversations with the C-suite? Maybe you start, Ali, because you were talking about authenticity before, and then we can close with Terry.
Yeah. I think that no bullshitting point's a good one, right? And I think, like, most people would hear that and go, but I would never do that. And of course you never would. I don't believe many people knowingly do that, but you can get to the point with, these conversations can sometimes, or these meetings can be really high pressure, and you can get to a point where you're just like, I just need to make this happen. And it can mean that you maybe are trying to adopt almost too much of the language you think they want to hear, or you've gone too far into kind of effectiveness maybe and how that works and marketing science, and it's just pitched too high, and you don't come across as knowing your stuff. And I think that is a danger, not because we don't intend to be authentic, but just because we get nervous, right? I remember a couple of years back, I did a questionnaire on marketers and maths, like literally assessing levels of confidence with maths, and people are just like, this is a lot of the response was like, I'm not confident with this, I'm not confident beyond kind of understanding kind of sales graphs and stuff, like don't know Dirichlet curves, don't know kind of cogs, all that kind of stuff. And that can be fine, but what you need to do is either decide the level that you're going to go to and tell your story your way, or you need to go and do like a mini MBA, and that's kind of fine too. But kind of decide which one it is, decide what your shtick is, and give it your own moxie. I think that's probably a main thing. The other quick thing I'd say, it's a team sport. Like, you will have partners of some kind, you'll have agency partners or in-house agency partners or different departments. Heck, bring in like somebody like Terry who can come and talk kind of authoritatively on things like this, or someone, you've probably got advisors of some kind that who just can, sometimes that outside perspective can be really helpful, especially if you as the inside person have brought that expert in and you're kind of doing it as a bit of a together partnership. That can just help build that trust and credibility without it kind of all being on you.
Love that. Terry?
Mine are really quite simple things. So I do love Ali's idea of bringing in other people because it brings other perspectives. So I really love that one, Ali. For me, unless you've got, again, a C-suite or a CEO who loves the detail, and some do, don't go into the detail. Keep it above board. Look at the broader macro picture and give them that information. If they want more information and more detail of the marketing kind of tactics, by all means, give that to them. But going to that first can overwhelm certain people, and also they're time poor. And knowing the ins and outs of that is generally not going to help their job, or perhaps you selling in, your marketing strategy to them. Never assume they understand marketing like you do. Again, Ali had a really good point where she said sometimes they do know it. They're a bit of they've got hidden knowledge, but don't use acronyms and don't use language that you just assume everyone understands, because it's very embarrassing for people if they don't understand it. It's very embarrassing for people to say, I don't understand what you mean, there. So always assume they don't understand it and just make things very clear. And the thing I would say, I've worked with a lot of really, really time poor CEOs, unbelievably time poor, that are like, just give me the top bits of information, and you think, oh my God, but there's so much more I need to tell you. But they're saying, I just actually don't have capacity to take in any more. Just hit me with the top 3 points. So I think that's really important, that you don't make things complicated, and you make things simple. Hey, if they've got more time, then you can absolutely go into the detail. But just, again, that's about knowing your CEO. If there's someone who's so time poor and they like bullet points, you better have a presentation that's not 50 slides long. Sure, you can email that afterwards and they can choose to read it, but you actually need to listen to what they're telling you and say, okay, I'm going to present the most important things really, in top line. And then they can drill down as they need. So, don't be too complicated. Keep things simple. Don't use acronyms. And they're really, really simple things, but I think people forget the way people take in information. So that's the kind of thing I would offer.
Yeah, I love that. All right. It's been a really fantastic conversation. I'm going to move to one of the questions that we have on the chat, which is from Laura, and she says, any advice to get the exec level to embrace the community and their personal brand? I have tried and failed many times, and it is so valuable.
Yeah.
Terry.
Yeah, so there's 2 parts here. One is, you may never get them to change, because there's a need to be a little bit vulnerable and be a little bit okay with being out there, and some people just are never ever going to do that. So I guess it's understanding that person. The other one too would be, give examples of people who do it really well. and what benefit it's provided to business. Like, hey, here's this CEO and they're doing this, and look at the great feedback they're getting, and it's very positive. And also, how can we help you manage it? Like, you don't have to do it all. We can write you posts. You can, like, if you can support them in that way, I think that's it. But I will say, not everyone is willing to do it. And so I think it's kind of choose your battles. Make sure if you are recommending it, go all in, but, be okay if they say no, because they're just personally, some people are just so uncomfortable with that kind of thing, aren't they?
Yeah. I've been there, Laura, as well. I know where that question comes from. And yeah, it's an uphill battle, and you have to know when. I love that piece of advice. There is you have to understand when it's a no, and it's just a no.
Yeah.
We don't have any more questions on the chat. So unless something else comes up in the next minute or so, I'm just going to have Ali and Terry kind of wrap in a small paragraph the key takeaway from you after the conversation. Maybe Ali, why don't you get us started?
Okay, so I think 3 things from me. Know your audience, but be yourself. Understand that what you are really trying to create is a culture where creative effectiveness is understood by your team, the C-suite, the board, whoever needs to understand it. Know that there'll be different levels of understanding, and that's fine. Not everybody needs to know it in the detail that you know it, but you need to have sown the seeds to get the best possible work that's going to get you the best possible result. And third, always know what your objectives are for every single piece of work, and how those objectives are part of that bigger ambition for the whole business, the whole brand. How does that jigsaw fit together? So those are my 3. Know the language, but be yourself. Make sure you've got those objectives for every piece of work and how you're going to measure them. And then making sure you're sowing the seeds of that culture of creative effectiveness.
Awesome. Terry?
I've got one. Know your audience. The end.
Yeah.
So, we know that's drilled into us as marketeers about our customers, but know your internal audience. Just really get to know them, unpack them like you would a customer, so that you can deliver information and in a way that will just mean something to them and will be relating to what they're trying to achieve. So that's the only one. There were so many, and I agree with all of Ali's, but I'm only going to say that. Know your audience. That really, really helps.
Absolutely. And I'm going to wrap up with mine, in addition to both of yours, which is remove any assumptions, or try not to fall into assumptions of like, this person knows what I'm talking about, or like really make sure that you're clear when telling your story, like Ali was saying before. So thank you so much, Terry and Ali, for joining us today. We're so lucky that we get to tap into your experience and knowledge. Thank you for being so amazing at sharing that with us. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. Remember that you can always watch these as a recording and share it with your network. There's more sessions like this coming. We're starting to build this community, and it's going to keep growing, and it's going to be fantastic. So keep an eye out on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to find the next sessions. Thanks again, and I hope everyone has a beautiful day.
Thanks, Gerardo.
Bye.
Thanks.